Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of LevelUp Cyber Live. My name is Tony Bryan and I am your host. I'm very excited about today's guest, Dr. Brian Gant with Maryville University. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Tony, appreciate you having me on.
So, we've been hanging out. I feel like this has been a trend for the last several guests we've had. I don't know, 4 or 5 years at this point.
At least.
I probably more. We met even before your time at Maryville University, and you've got an interesting career path, I think, to get to where you're at today. So I know you pretty well, but I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them a little bit about how you got to where you're at and how you got into cybersecurity.
Well, hello again, everyone. Dr. Brian Gant, assistant professor in the John E. Simon School of Business at Maryville University. I run the undergraduate program at Maryville, as well as oversee currently our Cyber Fusion Center, which will newly be renamed the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. So I've been in Maryville about a little over 3 years. I'm a Maryville alum, graduated in 2003, way back when we didn't have all of the cool stuff we have now. And prior to that, I spent almost 20 years in the federal government as a FBI intelligence analyst and a special agent with the Secret Service working cybercrime. So I've come full circle right back to Maryville.
Your background, you went from federal service or government service to corporate America back to education, right? I think is an interesting path, right? A lot of folks jumped into, we'll do adjunct professing, but you went in, you jumped into the deep end of the pool and said, I'm going to do this full time. What provoked that decision for you to get out of being a practitioner? And I'm sure I know you're still practicing, but to focus just your career on the education side of it.
I always had a kind of an itch with, as you said, being an adjunct professor. So even while I was with the federal government, I would teach a class here and there, maybe once a year, whether it was criminal justice class, business ethics, anything regarding technology or cybersecurity. And so I always had a affinity for giving back, teaching young people, and wanting to just create that knowledge transfer between industry and education. And it just so happened that I was blessed with the opportunity for it to happen sooner than later, right? So when your alma mater comes calling and there's an opportunity there to teach, I went back to Maryville and got my doctorate in 2021. And so it seemed like everything kind of aligned perfectly with leaving federal government service and pursuing a higher education position. And, I don't regret it at all. I'm enjoying it, and I'm still able to actually stay in contact with a lot of the individuals within the federal government, as well as a short stint I did at BJC Healthcare as well, which ultimately helps our students, right? Students go to school to get an education, to ultimately get that career that they've always wanted. So having those connections within the federal government sector, within private industry, and the cybersecurity community, as you know, Tony, in St. Louis is a small one, and we all know each other. It just pays dividends, especially in the business that we're in.
I'm assuming that some of the folks that saw the topic of today's discussion, right? College is a great way for folks to get skills. I'm sure when they're used to seeing CyberUp content are probably thinking, wow, this is a bizarre subject. They're always, talking apprenticeships and non-traditional pathways and skills and alternative ways other than college to get into careers. But I think the thing to keep in mind of this is, skills are skills. We've been fairly agnostic across the board around, skills paths that individuals take. And not quite honestly advocate often and frequently in our outreach events to middle school and high school students about all of the great skills paths that are available. And college education still continues to be, one. And if we're calling a spade, and we're being honest, there's still an incredible amount of employers that college education is the measurement of success, right? For somebody to get that entry level job. And we haven't fully made that transition as a country, or just as corporations to really, have 100% skills-based hiring. And maybe we get there at some point, maybe we don't. But
Right.
The point of that little ramble really is that there are lots of great ways for you to, in the description here, to bake a cake, right? You might put the ingredients in there a little bit differently. You might, do a couple different types of cakes and batter there, but at the end of the day, you're going to get a cake. And I think similar to a cybersecurity professional, there are lots of great ways to get skills. You could self-teach, go to college, find apprenticeships. And, today's discussion is really is intended to highlight the value that a college education brings for folks. I think it brings the value to the great work that Maryville University has done around being NSA Center of Academic Excellences and what that actually translates to students, right? So I really just wanted to set the stage before I jumped into that first question. And, for you today is, what you're getting students, constantly. And I know cyber, from all your peers and multiple universities and community colleges across the country, cyber continues to be one of the fastest growing, degree selections for individuals. What do you think is attributing to that desire and interest for folks to find, pursue college education, maybe in that later in life for cybersecurity degrees?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? So any issue or hurdle that you have in society that has a multitude of different things that you have to address with it, you have to be very, very diverse in the way you handle it, right? And so, as you mentioned, apprenticeships is one way we can kind of address that particular hurdle. And then we also have, traditional, college education. And so, Maryville and the community, the St. Louis community as a whole, I think it's kind of unique with a lot of other different areas in comparison. We actually work together. We have a great council called GHEC, Gateway Higher Education Cyber Consortium, in which all of the cybersecurity departments in the region, all the higher education institutions, we actually meet monthly and we discuss the multiple different ways that we can impact the pipeline in terms of cybersecurity careers, education, all of those different things. And so, Maryville has a wonderful program in which we get students from all over the country. We're able to teach these students in an alternative learning environment, which means that we are very, very focused on hands-on learning. We're very, very focused on providing internships and experience prior to the student graduating, even so that the student could actually be working on a production network with a nonprofit organization or with a school district, doing some high-level cybersecurity services and getting that experience with some of the industry tools and things of that nature. And so we are always looking for different ways to address cybersecurity because it is an attractive field right now. That could be because of the salaries. It could be just because of the demand. Cyberseek.org is a website that I go to often. We actually keep a counter on the bottom of our GHEC webpage. And I think last time I looked at it, it was around 13,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the St. Louis region alone, right? And so, that includes, that's a mixture of entry level as well as mid-level careers, but the opportunities are endless there, whether it's in cyber or data analytics or AI, computer science, they all kind of go together. And so anything within STEM, there's opportunities out there for students, career changers. We have certificates at Maryville, traditional undergraduate cybersecurity degree, as well as a master's in cybersecurity. So we're trying to find multiple on-ramps for individuals to get into this field, get experience immediately, and be successful. And we've done a great job at that right now. I believe we have a 98% career outcomes rate, which means our students are either going on to obviously get a job, going on to graduate education, pursuing the military. So we've had great success.
Yeah, as one thing that really pops to my mind, and I just re-looked this a couple weeks ago. The each year, between 50 and 60,000 students are graduating across the country with a computer science degree, right? Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think the last count for cybersec, there's like 660,000 open jobs. If I remember correctly, I'm sure I could look it up here, but we're gonna lowball it to 60,000,
Right.
and we're gonna easy math, or we're gonna say there's 660,000 or 600,000 open jobs. Holy cow! And we'll say there's 60,000 students a year that are graduating, and assuming that every single one of them, which we know is not going to happen, chooses cyber as a career field, and then there's employers in the back end of that all those positions reach your level. We actually close this, skills gap, where we reach full employment in cybersecurity in the low time frame of 10 years, right?
10 years.
So like it's a crazy thing to think about it, but it also highlights the importance of multiple skills paths for folks to get into that. And why I think, what the work that you do and the work that lots of schools that are members of GHAC and even beyond that, right? There's lots of great programs. And we'll dive in a little bit more to the Center of Academic Excellence here in a minute. But I know there are a lot of folks that listen to this that find themselves maybe as career transitioners, or maybe they're furloughed or let go of their, from their current employment. So they're looking for that next step.
Right.
We get called quite often around like, hey, what can you do to help us? What advice would you give to somebody, who finds themselves in that spot and is really looking towards, a college program that they'd like to jump back into because they've got some more time and resources behind it? Like, what advice would you give those folks looking to career transition and maybe get back into cyber through, a program like Maryville has to offer?
It would be just to network, right? Network and make that call. Send me an email, call me, call CyberUp, call Launch Code or whatever you have, just to see if whatever program they have fits your particular need. It's all about finding that match and finding out where you are in life and what fits your particular need. There's a variety of different things you can do. Whether it's certifications, and I want to make it a clear distinction, right? There's a difference between getting a graduate or undergraduate certification from a higher education institution, and then or getting a certificate from a higher education institution, and getting a certification from a governing body like CompTIA or IC Squared. The certificate is a mixture of 3 or 4 different cybersecurity classes, giving you a good foundation, giving you something to put on your resume, kind of an entry level way you can kind of get into the field without having to do the 4-year degree if that doesn't fit your particular path. The certification is actually you studying for a test, right? You studying for a test or a particular skill in a particular area of cybersecurity, and it just adds a little value. All right. And so best case scenario, I always tell people, in my opinion, is to have a mixture of the two, some form of formal education and maybe a certification, and with whichever path you so choose. But having a conversation with someone and kind of detailing out that plan, I always think is a good first step. My communication channel is always open to those willing to discuss getting into the field. Because at the end of the day, Tony, as you just mentioned, we can have everybody pick cybersecurity and graduate, and we still would not meet the skills gap that we're currently experiencing, like you said, within 10 years. So it's just amazing the types of opportunities that are out there. And so like I commend organizations like CyberUp who are working to address those hurdles in multiple ways.
Yeah. So let's say, like somebody like myself, I, went to school I was a very non-traditional student, by the way. I think I got my degree in my mid to late 20s. So I was not 18 and went to college right after high school. Well, hold on. I did that, failed miserably, and then eventually found myself back in school. I got an undergrad, maybe in business or marketing or something. And I, find that I want to make that transition. Does a master's program make sense for me, or should I go back to an undergrad program and maybe reimagine that if my degrees or maybe my education paths are so widely different or diverse from one another? What advice would you give for those folks?
Ironically, you still could possibly make it work. Let's say you had a business degree in marketing, right? the cybersecurity program at Maryville and a lot of other institutions is housed within the School of Business. And so, because we feel as though you have to have business acumen, you have to have the ability to communicate, understand budgeting, all of these things, marketing, as a cybersecurity professional, especially if you want to get into the leadership ranks. So you could have a undergraduate degree in marketing, pursue a master's in cybersecurity, and then maybe get, let's say you were into blue team and you want to do incident response, maybe get a certification, CYSA plus certification. That puts you in a very good position to get hired, at a lot of different organizations. So you don't necessarily have to change up what you did at the undergrad level, to get into the field, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, but again, it's all about tailoring what you're trying to do with what you already have accomplished. If you are that career changer, so it's various ways to do it.
I think, just kind of adding on to that, some of the feedback I've gotten and just some of the things I've seen firsthand is a lot of the skills and things you obtain and periphery things, whether it's sales, business, that those soft skills and some of that business acumen that you're going to bring is valuable within this space to corporations because you're bringing an additional experience, right? Where, it's easy to like be dismissive, I guess, if you will, of like, oh, I've got 7 years experience doing this thing. It's not in the same periphery. It's not going to relate. I've always kind of challenged, if I'm a chef, or I'm a server in a restaurant, right? I'm accustomed to high stress situations, rushes and staff and maybe dealing with unruly customers. I have a lot of interpersonal communication skills and time management skills and maybe some stress relief tactics that I've been able to learn through the service industry is very transferable into a SOC team, or incident response kind of stuff. So, there's lots of great ways that you can transition skills from other career fields, take a little bit of education, whether formal or informal, and stack it and really make yourself an attractive cybersecurity professional.
Yeah. A lot of misnomers out there that if I had been sat down and programmed and love math, that I will not be successful in cybersecurity, which is 100% not the truth, right? There's so many different ways.
Sure. I think I've told this multiple times, but I know a program I had done with a school here in St. Louis, WashU. I was surprised at the amount of overlap, if you will, or similarities to the role that I do at CyberUp between board management and leadership influence and just collecting data often to like inform decisions. And there's a lot of parallels of that to a chief information security officer, maybe senior leadership within cybersecurity roles, because it really is, you are the linkage, right, to maybe non-technical folks that you're trying to explain needs, desires, and best practices of how you're going to protect a network. And if you're using jargony and terms and slang that's going to be, out of a more technical type of background,
Right.
you're going to lose your audience and not necessarily be able to get to the things that you want. So there really is that kind of fine line and balance between business acumen and just, I think, general know-how and some of your technical skills where those match. Now you guys have a very unique facility, I think, on campus. It's really helped your students over the last several years, which is a Cyber Fusion Center, soon to be the Cyber Center of Excellence, which is, is great to hear. And we tapped a little bit of it, but I'd love for you to tell, because I think there are other schools across the country that are looking, or even organizations across the country that are looking to do what you guys have accomplished within the Cyber Fusion Center, right? Like, which is hands-on skills and practical help and maybe some real-world experience. Tell us more about the Fusion Center, the transition to the Center of Excellence, and what that provides for your students.
So our Cyber Fusion Center, or Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, is a facility. We have two magnificent rooms on campus, very, very high tech, digital wall board, very, very modular in nature. We have a tech bar, and it allows us to kind of holistically provide a service to the community and our students all at once. And so in a nutshell, let's say I write a grant in the summertime. I get awarded this grant, and this grant allows me the ability to offer cybersecurity services high level for free, right, to nonprofit organizations or school districts. And so a lot of people say, well, why nonprofits or school districts? Well, traditionally, school districts and nonprofits don't necessarily have the budgets to dedicate a lot of money toward, cybersecurity or information technology security protections. Attackers know this, right? We see ransomware events hitting school districts all the time, nonprofit organizations. And the reason why is that these individuals know that a certain level of security protections or any protections at all aren't present in those particular areas. So we can actually offer some high level services, vulnerability scanning, phishing campaigns, things like that, to these businesses free of charge. The caveat to that is we actually have our students actually acting as consultants. So actually the client is the school district, let's say. They're actually as the consultant. They're having business meetings with them. They're going through proof of concepts, discussing what's going to be accomplished, even service level agreements in terms of periodically receiving a report on how the network is looking and things like that. And they're doing that while they're still in school. We actually have a dedicated course the students can enter and actually go through this whole process. And we have a lab manager that manages this process and a particular area. And so, when they go to their internship or they go to their first job, they can actually say, yes, I've used Nessus, or yes, I've used Rapid7 to conduct some vulnerability scans already, before I even graduated from college. And that's huge in terms of the competitive market that cybersecurity careers are, and just giving them an experience. And then it also goes back to those ALE, those alternative learning experience principles that we teach at Maryville as well. So holistic approach, we're serving the community, getting students experience, and we're keeping Maryville in the forefront. And we're addressing the pipeline issue. And we recently just changed it to the cybersecurity of excellence because we recently at the undergrad level were just awarded the NSA Center of Academic Excellence designation for cyber defense. There's a process, a long process that you go through with the federal government, with the NSA, National Security Agency, and they basically look at your program from top to bottom, and they decide on whether or not you are instructing students and you are doing the things that you need to do as an institution in terms of cybersecurity defense. And if you are afforded that designation, which is huge for our students. You are allowed to participate in the community, whether it's working groups, different trainings, and you're allowed to have those opportunities available for the students and faculty who teach in their position as well. And we actually currently are going through the process of our master's in cybersecurity, getting that designation as well. So hopefully that should be done by the end of the year.
So what is, and you alluded a little bit to what that means for students, right? It's, but what does that mean for employers as well? I know there's a lot of work and back end stuff, right? Of mapping curriculum and establishing standards, which means you're going to take a student to X, right? So from an employer standpoint or student standpoint, like what does that do for me? Does that translate, more to better skills for that employer? Like what does that really, and I know it's a huge deal. So congratulations to you guys for accomplishing it. And good luck with the master's program. But what does that mean for, hiring managers or for students that are looking at this?
Right. So from a hiring manager or employer perspective, you're always wanting to know, like I said, this is a competitive field, right? Everybody's trying to jump into it. The boot camps are popping up all over the place. People are trying different programs, things of that nature. So from a hiring perspective as an employer, you always are trying to find ways to make sure you are getting what is being sold to you, right? Having that designation tells that employer, I know for sure that at this particular level, this student is going to come here knowing this information because he's been through this type of curriculum, and the institution that he or she is coming from actually practices what they're preaching, right? So at a minimum, you know that much. Just like an internship, the beautiful thing about internships is that you're able to kind of test out the student before you hire them, right? It works for the employer and it gets their student experience. So that designation, you know, does that for our students as well. So it's kind of that badge of honor that they can put out there that gives them a little more validity in the community.
And I think, is Maryville the only four-year institution in St. Louis with that designation now? I think St. Louis Community College did the 2-year program.
Yeah, no, I believe Webster has it. Might be another institution as well. Maybe
Nice.
two or three. Mhm.
I know Rolla did S&T at one point, you know, early on in the process, because it's been around for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, the idea and the designation, and it's a huge accomplishment for schools. To Brian's point, there's a community college version, a 4-year program, and a master's level program. So it's evaluating all of those levels, and they're recognized every year at the annual NICE conference, and there's a conference right after that where, you know, there's additional kind of supports of those for the college university. So it is a great way, and I think it is reinforcing. Right, we've had a big couple weeks in policies and recommendations from the current administration. Right, we had. The workforce policy dropped yesterday. The week before, there was, you know, some kind of guidance around the future of just cybersecurity as a whole. All very exciting to see this, and I think a big focal point in both of those documents was really the idea of federal service. You know, because that's where we're struggling quite a bit in the recruitment for orgs like FBI and NSAs and CISAs and DHSs. So, you know, having these centers of academic excellence is a great way for individuals to get a first kind of test bed into, you know, what that would look like. And there's such a mission oriented focus, I think, on those roles for federal service, right? That's out there, and a great way to get into it. You know, what has been the most, I think, joyous thing? I know we do things with youth, and I know it's important for Maryville to get students and future students on campus, right? But like, what are some of the things you're enjoying doing on an annual basis or, you know, daily basis with your students on campus?
I think the coolest thing that we do is we actually reinstituted our Cyber Security Summer Institute for our high schoolers this summer. First time we've done it in person since COVID. And so that actually gives us the ability to influence at a younger age, which I think is key to addressing this pipeline issue. It allows our current students to give back in a way. It allows me to assess them to see how they're communicating with what I'm teaching them on down. And just, you know, having those different experiences that we've been able to have this summer, I think is one of the things that kind of drives me. Girls Incorporated, Boys and Girls Club, and even experience with a coding camp of some middle schoolers and some younger kids. We had a very, very busy summer, but those kinds of items actually energize me into doing what I do throughout the year, and actually having students come back who have matriculated on to different careers, and they're the ones that are sitting on the cybersecurity panels, right, for these high schoolers. That's a cool thing to witness. So I appreciate that, and we want to keep it rolling.
I think it's just tagging on to that. It's so important that we want to have kids in middle school and high school. You know, when you ask them questions like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" which we ask all the time, right? It's a fairly common question. We want students and kids to start saying things. I want to be a cybersecurity professional, or I'll be happy with heck. I want to be a hacker, right? Of course, we want to be a good hacker, you know. But those type of things are really just, you know, there is such a fun career path with lots of great ways and skills to get into it. And, you know, a byproduct is you can get compensated fairly well along the way. So, I mean, there's a lot worse career fields I'm sure you could probably go and pick that are out there. So
That's right.
So always goes fast. I know we jumped on and said 30 minutes goes quick, and here we are at 30 minutes already. So the last question we ask every guest is, what advice would you give for folks looking to level up their cybersecurity career?
I think the best advice, like I said, other than networking, is take the time to educate yourself on your own. You'll be surprised at just listening to a podcast, subscribing to a RSS feed, a subscription service like bleepingcomputer.com. You'd be surprised of just kind of immersing yourself in it, just kind of understanding what's going on, current trends, things like that. I think that's the best advice I could possibly give, because when you have that interview, or when you have that informal discussion over coffee, and you go back and forth and you show that you're kind of knowledgeable with what's going on, or the trends that are out there, that just gives you kind of a leg up, because no one knows everything that's going on within cyber. YouTube University is a real thing, right? So just having that ability and understanding how to adapt and continuously learn, that's the best advice I can give.
Yeah, that is fantastic advice. And I'm going to tag on to that one more thing and just say, if you haven't gone out and read both kind of policy recommendations over the last 2 weeks in the white paper, they're long, right? And I promise you, there's lots of smart people that have broken it down. I know Accenture's done a couple things, and PwC's taken some of those documents and parsed it down to more bite-sized pieces. But that's the future. It really is the future of our industry. There's a lot of energy and focus. That policy that got dropped today, there was a substantial amount of federal funding that's coming along behind it to reinforce it and really drive, I think, the change that we need. And quite honestly, I keep seeing more and more ideas of things like, a cyber force instead of a space force kind of stuff, where this really is kind of futures and front line. So that advice of just staying up to date on current trends is really important. And there's some of them, like the last 2 weeks, are just more important. I might say they're more important than other stuff, but that's driving policy, procedure, and just really the foundation of the industry as a whole. So a great read. So
that's right,
Brian, I appreciate the time. I appreciate your leadership with Cyber Up. Appreciate just all you do for Maryville students. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of them over the years. All of them continue to surpass my expectations of what you would think a 20, 21-year-old young adult would do, right? And they thrive under Maryville's kind of education. So appreciate, the effort and curriculum you guys have put together, and the hard work you've brought to, helping inspire the next generation of cyber leaders. So with that, excited to we got a great, next 5 weeks of shows that are coming up. They're going to get, a lot of them are going to get posted this week. So be sure you tune in and see where they're going to be at. And until next week, appreciate you. Thanks again, Brian. And everyone have a great week.
All right, everyone. Thank you.